Hello, I'm Alan R. Payne, and I want to tell you about my work with Fantastic Books Publishing in East Yorkshire. I've been a regular contributor to their charity competitions. In 2017, we were challenged to write a dark dystopian story around the subject fire and ice in aid of Fibromyalgia Action UK. I was delighted that my story Damned If You Do was selected for the final collection called The Forge, which was published in 2019. I'm going to read it for you in a moment. This is a great anthology of 27 contributions. I've had other stories published by FBP, and I'll be reading some of these and other material in future videos. Fantastic Books have also published my new science fiction novel, A Suggestion in Space. It's not as dark as the story that I'm about to read, which is probably just as well. It's an interstellar adventure with romance, coming of age, secrets and surprises, tragedy and joy. Serious science fiction that also explores lives and relationships. A Suggestion in Space and The Forge are available through the attached links. And now, Damned If You Do. Death by ice or death by fire? That is the question. Having the life sucked out of you by freezing water is hardly a walk in the park, but there are no words to describe the agony of being burnt to death. The piteous screams of someone having their body eaten away by flames stays with the listener forever. But everything has its compensations, thought Galen, and he didn't have to think for very long before coming to his decision. He closed his eyes. "Okay, fire please," he said. When he opened them, he was standing beside a swimming pool in a tropical forest. As the sun was rising through a gap in the trees, the patio next to the pool extended into a small wooden house, simply but artistically decorated in a Southeast Asian style. A beautiful dark-haired young woman swimming languidly in the pool smiled and waved to him. Another, wearing a short cotton dress, came out of the house. "Hello, Galen, my name is Rose," she said. "Would you like something to drink? We have some very good champagne on ice, or would you prefer a beer?" "Champagne, please," said Galen, settling down on the lounger. The temperature and humidity were perfect. It was luxuriously warm without being oppressive. Rose came out of the house, handed him a very large glass of champagne, peeled off her dress, and lay down naked on the lounger beside him. The others stood up in the water and rested their breasts on the pool edge. "I'm Amethyst, Galen, but you can call me Amy. When you've had your drink, why not take your clothes off and come for a swim? And then, if you like, we could give you a massage." "I'd like that," he said. "After that, would we have time for some fun?" "Of course, you can do whatever you like. Relax and enjoy yourself, but we only have till this afternoon." She said this with a cheery tone, and no hint that anything unpleasant was going to happen. Galen was dimly aware that there was a flaw in this perfect world, but was unable to think what it was. Any lingering doubts he had were soothed away by Amy massaging his head and shoulders, while Rose worked on his legs and back. "Would you like some of that fun we were talking about earlier?" said Amy. "Who's it going to be, or would you like both of us at the same time?" "Could I have some time with you, Amy?" said Galen, "and then see you later, Rose, if that's okay?" "Fine with me," said Rose. "I get turned on by the anticipation." "I'm ready for you now," said Amy. "What would you like, the bedroom or outside on the patio?" When the sun was high overhead, Rose brought lunch from the house, as if there was a cordon bleu chef somehow hiding in a small corner kitchen. Then they played together in the pool, laughing and joking with each other as if the day was never going to end. But nothing lasts forever. The sun went behind a cloud, and for the first time Galen started to feel a little cold. "I think it's time for a walk," said Rose, getting out of the pool and putting on her dress. Galen looked at her. He was sure that it was the same dress that she'd been wearing when they first met, but somehow it didn't complement her figure in the way that it had before. Amy also put on a dress that she'd somehow laid her hands on. It looked like it ought to cling to her wet body in a provocative way, but instead it seemed strangely unalluring. Galen started to walk over to his clothes, but the two women took him by the arms. For the first time, Galen caught an air of unfriendliness. "Don't worry about those things," said Amy. "You won't get cold with us." "That's right," said Rose. "Clothes would just get in the way where you're going." "You mean where we're going?" said Galen. "No," said Amy, "I think it's just you. Isn't it, Rose?" "Yes, just you," said Rose. The women steered him down a path behind the house. Stones hurt his bare feet, biting ants crawled up his leg, and a leech fell from a tree onto his head. Rose and Amy marked on, oblivious. Galen started to get a sense of foreboding. Something didn't feel quite right. "Not much further to go," said Amy. "It's amazing to see the light of a setting sun on the rocks with the lava pools glowing below." Lava pools! The full realization what was happening struck Galen as if a giant hand had grabbed his stomach and twisted it through 360 degrees. He tried to pull away, but the hands on either side of him tightened to a vice-like grip. "You didn't think pleasure comes without a price," said Rose, her face twisted into a malevolent sneer. "It's amazing how we fooled you into thinking that we were enjoying ourselves with someone as pathetic as you," said Amy. "Pretty good actors, aren't we? Don't worry, it'll all soon be over. But before that, you'll be wishing it was sooner." The forest opened out into a clearing where the rocky ground rose towards a small volcano. Amy was right. The setting sun did look amazing on the rocks, and even the lava pools were beautiful if you didn't think about how hot they were. Amy and Rose brought Galen to the edge of a shimmering molten rock. He coughed in the searing sulphur-laden air and shook in spite of the heat. "Okay, let's get it over with," he said. "It's not quite sunset yet," said Rose. "We've still got time for a little chat. Do you remember how you wet yourself in front of a whole class at primary school?" "What about how Samantha Geisley laughed at you when you asked her out?" said Amy. "You had a huge crush on her, didn't you?" said Rose. "Did you think I would really fancy someone like you?" said Amy, exactly imitating Samantha's voice. On and on they went, dragging up every embarrassing, painful and humiliating moment in his life, until a dip in the lava pool started to seem like a merciful release. "It's nearly time," said Rose, her words grating in Galen's ears. How could this be the woman who only hours earlier had been ecstatically gasping in his arms? "Kill me now, please kill me now. Oh, how sad, he's crying," said Amy. "He'll be crying even louder in a moment," said Rose, and they pushed him into the lava. He ended up waist deep in the viscous liquid. Galen thought he would be able to put his head under the surface to end it more quickly, but he was paralyzed as if tied to an invisible pole. Through the blinding pain he remembered the other times. It was always a day of pleasure, followed by a fiery death, but different every time. The creativity of his torturer knowing no bounds. It was bad enough being burnt to death once, but Galen had been through it so many times before. Amy and Rose stood close by, still taunting him, but all he was aware of was the pain and the sound of terrible screaming. Everything went black. Then he found himself lying on a floor in a pool of dim light. The walls of the room were either lost in the darkness or didn't exist. Galen's heart and breathing were racing, but he was alive and whole, and the only pain was in his head. The scene was depressingly familiar. He didn't know if he died and gone to hell, or whether his mental patterns had been captured electronically, and he was living out eternity in a computer simulation, or if some other fate he could not understand had befallen him. After some time, there was no way of knowing how long, he heard a voice. "It's time to choose again, Galen. What's it to be? Ice or fire?" Ice, I suppose, said Galen reluctantly. Instead of lying on the floor, he was on the rubber base of a life raft. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt that were already soaked in the freezing water that was sloshing around in the undulating craft. In the sea around him were ice floes stretching to the horizon in all directions. Here we go again, thought Galen. It wouldn't take him long to succumb to hypothermia. Not as bad as what he had just experienced, but he wondered how many of these icy scenarios he would be able to withstand before he was desperate enough again to opt for the ecstasy and the agony of a glorious day, ending with humiliation and death by fire.